to chase the sun, and bacteria. For example, if we use a lot of biotics, bacteria will grow the ability they evolve, right? And that sometimes comes back to human beings and caused an unwholesome result. So I personally think they could be some kind of living being. I don't know, because I'm not in their minds.
Yeah, I would. Well, they don't have a mind. The bacteria, the virus, the plant, it doesn't have a mind. But I would encourage you to look at the 5 aggregates, which you just got introduced to now. I would encourage you to look at those more deeply, understand what each of those are, and look at these things that you're thinking might be a living being, and you'll be able to see that it's not a living being. Right now, you're just working based on the level of wisdom that you have right now. But you're going to need to bring in new wisdom to be able to understand what are the 5 aggregates and then apply it in these situations. Because you're not interested in clinging to what you currently think about the world. I've done that work. I've looked at this, and I know that plants and bacteria and viruses aren't a living being, but you need to be able to see the truth for yourself by penetrating into it more closely. Because what you're describing is it's not a mind that is making choices and decisions. What you're describing is biological things. Like a tree can sit there with its leaves, and then when the sun comes up, the leaves will kind of turn towards the sun in some cases, right? Some trees will do that. It's not a conscious choice that is coming from the mind. It is just a biological response that the plant is structured in such a way that the structures of the leaf will gravitate towards the sun. So you need to be able to first understand what the 5 aggregates are very closely, then apply it to all of these different things, and then you'll be able to see the truth for yourself. And you can't necessarily do that just sitting in a class like this.
Can I ask, what do you think a mind is?
What do I think the mind is? I know that the mind is non-tangible, it's non-physical. It is the consciousness, it's where all your thoughts and ideas, your perceptions, your choices and decisions, all those things are coming from the mind. It's a non-physical, intangible thing. So there's the brain, which is the physical organ, but then there's the mind, which is separate from the brain, and it's non-physical. It's where your thoughts and ideas, all your experiences, it's where your wisdom is stored. It's your awareness. That's what the mind is.
Would you mind share why you think?
Why plants don't have minds? Yeah, because a plant doesn't make decisions to say, get up, walk down the street, and put itself back down. It doesn't have volitional formations and choices and decisions. And the only way that a plant can do that is if it has a mind. So that's why a plant doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have perceptions, which are views and opinions. Like a tree doesn't sit there and be like, I think it's a sunny day today, and I really like sunny days. A tree doesn't look at other trees and be like, wow, I like the bark on my tree better than the bark on that tree, right? It doesn't have perceptions about the world. It also doesn't make choices and decisions. It can't choose to pick itself up, walk down the street, and put itself back down, and that's because it doesn't have a mind. So you can see that it doesn't have all of these things, and you can see that because it doesn't have those things, it doesn't have a mind either. But this is something you need to look at, because some people just hold on to this perception that trees are living beings, and they just want to believe that trees are living beings, and the trees. Yeah, we got to take care of the trees, and we need to make sure that we have trees so that we can breathe oxygen and things like this. But trees are here to provide us resources. They are not a living being. We can harvest a tree. We can harvest a broccoli. We can harvest a cauliflower. And we can see that there's wholesome results in that. If I grow a broccoli and then I harvest it and eat it, it produces wholesome results. There is no unwholesome results whatsoever. And you can see that it's not a living being through the natural law of Kamma too. Not only the 5 precepts, but the natural law of Kamma, because if this was a living being and I killed it by taking the broccoli, then I would experience unwholesome results, but I don't. And that's how one of the ways you can see that it's not a living being. Yeah. Okay, so now let's go to the second one. The second one, that's the third one. The second one, the Buddha says, abandoning the taking of what is not given, living purely, accepting what is given, awaiting what is given, without stealing. So, of course, he's teaching you not to steal here. And by the way, on this first one, just like all the others, the Buddha is teaching you to eliminate craving, anger, and ignorance, right? Because in order to kill a living being, there has to be a certain craving, then that craving, the mind wants and expects something. Then there's an expectation there. And now when it doesn't get met, there's this anger and this hostility, this ill will towards the other being. And then there's this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality. And the same thing here with the second precept. In order to steal, there needs to be a certain amount of craving. I want that car. I don't have enough money to buy it myself, and I'm not willing to go work in order to get that money, but I want that one, and I'm going to steal it. There's a certain amount of craving. There's a certain amount of ill will, because now I'm causing harm to this other being, and it's coming from the ignorance, right? So that talk we just had a bit earlier, this is mapping into that too. So the Buddha teaches not to steal because we can cause harm to others, and then harm will come back to us. We can't cause other people to be discontent. Just like you're causing your own discontentedness, you can't cause other people to be discontent, but you can cause them harm. What harm is where you're causing harm to someone's reputation, to their material possessions, or to their physical body. And when you cause harm to another being, their reputation, their material possessions, or their physical body, that harm is going to come back to you. So I can't cause someone else to be discontent, but I could cause them harm. So if I stole somebody's car, now they can't go to work. That's going to cause harm to them. They can't take their children to school if they have children. They can't go to the store and buy food and other supplies that they need to sustain their life, right? So I've caused harm to this individual. So that's why the Buddha teaches you not to steal, so you can get rid of your craving, you can get rid of causing harm to others, and harm doesn't come back to you. Also, it's important to not assume that something can be used or taken, right? If I walked into a college class and I had a paper and there was a stapler on the desk of the professor, and I just picked up the stapler and I started using it, and now the professor walks into the classroom and they're like, "Hey, that's my stapler. What are you doing?" Right? Well, now they're getting angry. They don't realize that they're causing their own anger. And they might look at me like I'm the one causing their anger, and now they might fail me on that paper, or they might fail me in the entire class. So what would have been better is if I would have just said, "Hey, professor, do you mind if I use your stapler?" And they're either going to say yes or no. And if I say yes, I'll use it. And if they say no, okay, no worries, I'll go find one another place, right? But if you assume that something can be used, you're going to put yourself in a situation where you might be experiencing difficulties. But remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't black and white. I just gave you one example where it would be wise to ask people before you use it. But let's just say I was out in my village and people were doing yard work, and my neighbor cut their arm and they were bleeding, and they were bleeding so strongly that they're going to die. And my other neighbor has a fabric on their front porch, and I can grab that fabric and put a tourniquet on their arm, and I could save their life, right? I'm not going to go over to the house, ding dong, and just wait for my neighbor to come downstairs, open the door. "Hello, neighbor, how are you? Do you mind if I borrow this fabric?" No, I'm just going to take the fabric. I'm going to go put a tourniquet on the person's arm. I'm going to save their life. And then when they're in the ambulance going to the hospital, I'm going to go to the neighbor's house. Ding dong. "Hey, I'm so sorry. I used a fabric that was on your front porch. I would like to fix this. Can I give you some money for that? Or can I go buy it somewhere and get you a new one? What can I do to fix this?" Right? So this isn't black and white. You need to be able to use your higher consciousness. That's what the Buddha is teaching you, is to make wise decisions. He's not giving you rules or plug and play. You need to be able to make wise decisions in each situation. Same thing with accepting what is given. Right? The Buddha teaches you to accept what is given. When somebody's making you an offering or they're giving you some generosity, he teaches you to accept that, right? Because that's helping that person's mind, right? So if grandma at Christmas time or whatever holidays you celebrate is giving you this sweater, that you know that you will never ever wear, the Buddha teaches you to accept it, right? Because it's helping grandma's mind to practice generosity. But now you can practice generosity too. You can give it to somebody else. And maybe it goes through 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different hands, but eventually it ends up in somebody's hands and they're like, oh my goodness, this is the most beautiful sweater I have ever seen. I'm going to wear it every day of my life, right? So all these different people practice generosity until it found somebody that is going to wear the sweater, right? Now, if grandma gets angry that you gave away the sweater, that's because of her craving, her expectation. She wasn't practicing pure generosity. You didn't cause her anger. It was her mind wanting and expecting things to be done a certain way, right? So if somebody's making you an offering, it's wise to accept it. But again, it's not black and white. If somebody offers you crystal methamphetamine or heroin, are you going to accept what is given? No, right? So the Buddha is not giving you this black and white approach. You got to use your higher consciousness and think through this of what would be wise and what would be unwise. And he's giving you the guidance to understand that. And then there's awaiting what is given. What this is like, say you have a life partner and they're going on a business trip and you know they're going somewhere. The Buddha teaches you await what is given. Don't load them up with a bunch of expectations. Hey, honey, get me this and get me this and get me this and get me that and get me this. Now they're burdened with all these things that you want. And if they bring you back what you want, you're happy. And if you don't get what you want, they're angry, you're angry or sad or frustrated, right? So the Buddha just teaches you to await what is given. If this person would like to get you something, they will get you something, right? But if you load them up with a bunch of expectations, this is unwise and it can cause conflict in your relationships. But again, it's not black and white. I've had students that come here and they say, hey, David, I'm going back to the USA for like 6 weeks. Then I'm going to come back to Thailand. Would you like me to get you something? Right? This is their generosity, right? So in that situation, you might say, sure, could you get me this or could you get me that, right? And now that's a practice of their generosity. So this is what the Buddha is teaching you here, but you're going to need to use your own mind to practice it wisely. Any questions on this one? Yes, ma'am. It just takes a second. There you go.
Okay, yeah. So in reality, when somebody give me something, every time I was just thinking about, okay, if I accept that gift, should I give something in return back? Or what's the purpose of this man? Just like you say, somebody asks you, hey, Dave, where do you want to? I'm going to go back America. But if I were you, I was thinking about, should I pay something for that man, or should I give it something? Or what's the purpose of this person? Like, I will just maybe I'll just make things become more complicated. And because I don't trust anyone like genuinely, like, because that is or even like between the close relationship, I will doubt for that.
Sure. So when you are accepting a gift, if you're not sure about this person and you're not sure what their intentions are, you could ask them before you accept it. You could say, oh, that's a very lovely gift. If I accept that, what do you expect from me? And if they say, oh, I don't expect anything from you, I just would like to give you this gift. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's pure generosity. But if they're like, hey, I expect you to go on a date with me, and I would like to take you over here and take you over there, that's not pure generosity, right? I actually had a student one time. She was dating a man, and she's a single mother, and she had kids, and this man bought her children winter jackets. And she was like, hey, you don't have to buy these winter jackets for them. I'll find the money somehow. And he's like, no, I want to give you these winter jackets for your children. And she was like, okay, if that's what you would like to do, it's up to you, right? Well, about 3 months later, they broke up. And he said, oh, you're taking advantage of me. No, she's not taking advantage of him. That was his choice to give her children the jackets. She didn't force him to do that. She didn't control them to do that. She didn't manipulate or coerce him to do that. That's a decision that he made in order to give her those jackets. But he had expectations. He was saying, I'm going to give these jackets because I expect you to date me and be my girlfriend, right? And that's not pure generosity. But if somebody gets angry because of that, that's them causing the anger. So just because someone gives you a gift doesn't mean you have to give them a gift back. You don't have to adopt that expectation in your mind. But if someone is offering you a gift and you're not sure of what their intentions are, just ask them a question. And then even you ask them a question like, what do you expect from me? And they say, I don't expect anything from you. Don't be surprised if 3 months later they have expectations, right? Because that can happen too. But at least you know right up front, you were clear and you knew that they said, I don't have any expectations. So now you can have a clear conscience that you know that you're not doing anything unwise in this situation. So you can choose to do those kinds of things.
Okay, so I just make sure at that time the intention is pure, and even though after 3 months or half years they change their mind and ask something from me, and there's no need for me to feel guilty to I should give something back, because at that time the person just tell me no, there's no expectations.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I shouldn't be feeling like guilty all the time.
Right, because if somebody says to you like, hey, I gave you those jackets, why aren't you being my girlfriend? That's a different choice, right? Like, you don't have to feel obligated to do this thing. You can see right there that they're not practicing pure generosity. And you can just be rest assured that, hey, if they get angry, if they get frustrated, if they're trying to pressure you like, hey, I gave you this, so therefore you have to give me that. That's not generosity. They had an expectation in their mind. Even if they didn't vocalize it at the very beginning, you can be comfortable that you asked them up front. They didn't vocalize it and they didn't tell you what it was. But now, months later, years later, they're showing that they had an expectation in their mind. You can disregard that expectation and just go on with your day and realize how this person, expectation is their expectation. You don't have any obligation to fulfill that person's expectation. That's their mind that's forming that. You don't have to adopt their expectation as your expectation of yourself.
And I should just walk away internally, and but I always do feel like a few months ago I do receive the help from them, and should I say sorry, or should I say sorry to cause you misunderstanding? Maybe I should make things more clear, but
each situation is going to be different, right? Like if I told you to walk away in every situation, that might not necessarily be the wisest thing, right? If they're angry, if they're bitter, if they're harsh, if they're hostile, yes, it's always wise to walk away from that because it's not the proper time to talk. But sometimes if they're just like, hey, I thought you were going to do this for me because I did that for you. It's like, oh, I can see you had an expectation. I didn't realize that you had expectation. If I knew that, I would have never accepted your gift, right? If I knew you had an expectation of me, I would have never accepted that. Are you now telling me that you have an expectation, right? If everything's calm and you guys can talk it through, you can talk it through and help them to be able to see it. But if they're bitter and harsh and hostile, which typically people are when their expectations aren't getting met, yeah, it's better to just walk away. But in every situation, it doesn't necessarily make sense to walk away. You need to be able to look at each situation. And that's where the Eightfold Path is going to really help you to be able to know that. What would be wise in any given situation? And there's multiple right answers. It's not just one right answer.
Yeah. Thank you, Master.
You're welcome.
Mostly what I was received is not a physical material or physical gifts, but emotion is the most time. Maybe some of us, they will share their happiness, but most of us, or basically in my job, they will share their anger, they will share their disappointed. Most of the time, I need to receive their emotion. But in fact, I do not, because their emotion will make me sad, will make me, I don't know how to handle them, or I don't know how to make them feel happier. Yes.
So their emotion isn't making you feel sad. That's thinking the outside world is making you feel sad. What's making you feel sad in that situation is your craving, desire, attachment. If you want this person to be peaceful and now they're angry, you're wanting them to be a certain way permanently. And if they're happy, you're happy. If they're sad, you're sad. This is your attachment. Your mind is attached to them. Your feelings and emotions are attached to them. But it's not their feelings that are causing your feelings. It's your attachment. It's your craving that's causing that. So you need to be able to see that very clearly. So if somebody's being happy and joyful with you, you don't have to get like so excited and bouncing off the walls just because they're happy and excited. And then when people are sad, you don't need to get sad just because they're sad. That's not the way that would be wise for you, because now your mind's going up and down based on external things. You would like to maintain your peace and your joy and your happiness and your cheerfulness regardless of what's going on in the world. So it's important that when people are being emotional, that you understand that they are causing those feelings themselves, and you don't have to adopt those same emotions, and you don't have to feel any particular way about this. So obviously in the work that I do, students come to me all the time and they talk to me about all kinds of personal and private matters. Sometimes they cry and they're really upset. I don't get upset. And it's not because I'm not concerned about them. It's not because I don't love them, because I do. I have love for them. I have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. And I do have concern for them. But my feelings and emotions aren't attached to them. That I understand that their mind is causing their own feelings. And the last thing I'm interested in doing is becoming angry or sad or frustrated because somebody else is. It's kind of like they're stuck in the quicksand and I'm going to get down into the quicksand with them. That's not how you help somebody get out of the quicksand. You got to stand on stable ground and you got to offer your hand and you say, hey, grab my hand. Look me in the eyes, grab my hand. You kick and I'm going to pull. And now you pull and they kick and they get out of the quicksand. But if you jump down in the quicksand with them, like your emotions become the same emotions as them, you're not serving anybody any benefit. So you need to be able to understand that their emotions are their emotions. It's being caused by their own mind. And any emotions that you're experiencing is being caused by your own mind. If you get to the point where you don't want and crave and desire for other people to be a certain way, then you can maintain your peace and joy no matter what. Where you understand their feelings, but you don't share in their feelings. That would be unwise to share in this person's feelings, because now you're going to be down in the darkness with them and in the sadness with them. Yep. Okay. All right. So continuing on, this next one is the third precept. I'll read this to you and then we'll walk through it and I'll teach it to you. The Buddha says, abandoning unchastity, abandoning sexual relations with women, men who are protected by their mother, father, mother and father, brother, sister, or relatives, who are protected by teachings, who have a husband, wife, or partner, whose violation entails a penalty, or even with one who has been garlanded by a man, woman, or partner as a sign of engagement. So what he's talking about here is harmful sexual activity and ensuring that we're not causing harm through our sexual actions, because we could cause harm and now this harm is coming back to us. So where he's talking about eliminating sexual relations with people who are protected by their family, what he's talking about there is not having sex with minors, right? If we had sex with like an 8-year-old child or 12-year-old child, this is causing harm to that individual. The family is guiding this individual, helping them grow and develop. And if we were to have sex with that person, it would take them away from that. If you've had sex, you know that it's a very impactful time, like your first time having sex. So if we choose to do that with a young child, their mind's not prepared for this intimate activity. So the Buddha teaches us that it's unwise to have sex with minors. And in most places in the world, the human laws match this, right? There's human laws that kind of give a threshold of when it's appropriate to have sex with a person or not, right? In terms of their age. But there's certain places where they don't have that. Right? There's like places in the world where it's legal to have sex with an 8-year-old child. And there's people regularly doing that. Right? But if you look at those societies, they're really struggling. Their economy, their political system, their educational system, their society is having significant issues. And that's because of the natural law of Kamma, this cause and effect. That if people are regularly having sex at 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, their mind isn't able to develop as well as someone who's waited for a longer period of time in a more established society. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you that it's unwise to have sex with a minor. Where the Buddha is talking about whose violation entails a penalty, this would be having sex without consent. Right? If we were to have sex without consent, we were raping somebody, forcibly having sex with them, this is going to cause harm to that person, and that harm is going to come back to us. We can get beat up, we can get murdered, we can get sexually transmitted diseases, we can get arrested, we can have all kinds of problems. Here, where the Buddha says abandoning unchastity, do you guys know what chastity is? I'll explain this to you. It's a really interesting story. In ancient times, fathers used to put metal underwear on their daughters, and they had a lock and key, and nobody could open the metal underwear except for the father, right? So this is chastity, where you're not having sex with anybody at all. Unchastity would be exactly the opposite, where you're having sex with everybody and anybody, like casual sex with just anybody and everybody without really putting any thought into it. So what the Buddha is teaching you is to abandon unchastity, where you're having sex with multiple people, like maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 people in a week, perhaps, right? Where what he teaches you essentially is to have a loyal, loving, committed relationship, that you're going to have a long-term relationship. And the reason why is because when we practice unchastity, that's where we're likely to get sexually transmitted diseases. Right? That's the unwholesome Kamma that is a result of our unwise decision. That's what the Buddha is teaching you here, is cause and effect, or action and result. And that's why we experience those sexually transmitted diseases. Some of those are fatal, right? And this is also where, like, if you have multiple partners, one person can get jealous of the other person, and you can have difficulties and challenges like this where people are getting beat up, getting murdered, your personal property and material possessions are getting destroyed. You can have all kinds of issues like this. So that's why the Buddha teaches that as part of the natural law. Some cultures, maybe you live in one of these cultures where if you meet a partner, you might move in with your family and live with them for a period of time, and then you move out and get your own house. If this is the case, the family has accepted the relationship, right? It's not what the Buddha is talking about up here, where he says about people being protected by their family. So if a family has accepted the relationship and you're choosing to move in with them and actually have sex in that situation, the family has accepted the relationship and you're still practicing this precept. Up here where the Buddha says, who are protected by teachings, what he's saying there is that there's some people that have chosen to no longer have sex as a way to get to enlightenment, right? You can get to the second stage of enlightenment and still be having sex. And someone might choose to do that, especially if you're young. Most of you guys look pretty young. You might be still choosing to have sex in that second stage of enlightenment. In that second stage of enlightenment, your life's going to be quite peaceful because you're doing all the other work on the path to enlightenment, but maybe you're still having sex. And in a situation where you're having sex, you're going to be happy, you're going to be excited, you're going to have this glow, you're going to feel so great. But in situations where you're not having sex, you're going to be grumpy and irritable and frustrated because you can't have sex. And that's why your mind's not permanently peaceful. It's not enlightened yet. So in order to get to enlightenment, an individual would need to ultimately eliminate sexual activity. But when or if you ever choose to do that is your choice. I have a lot of young people that study with me and they practice the teachings. They make their way up to the second stage of enlightenment. They kind of hang out there for many years. Maybe they're young. They're going to have a family. They're going to have a partner. But then at some point, you're going to see how that temporary pleasure of sex ultimately leads to hostility and aggression and frustration and agitation and annoyance within your own mind. And you're going to appreciate that peacefulness and joy. There's actually something better in the world than sex. I know that's probably hard to imagine, but there is something better than sex. It's called enlightenment. And that peace and joy of the enlightened mental state will start to come through your mind more and more, and you'll start valuing that more. But whether somebody chooses to ever give up sex or not, that's a choice for them to make. It's not up to me to decide. I've made that decision for myself. It's up to other people to decide for themselves what they would like to do. But as long as somebody is having sex, they're going to have frustration, agitation, and annoyance to a certain degree in their mind. So the people that have chosen to give up sexual activity, they're what the Buddha is referring to as protected by teachings. They've decided to remain celibate. And if we chose to lower this person away from their celibacy, we're causing harm to that person. Because the very best thing that could ever happen for an individual is getting to enlightenment. If you get to enlightenment, it's the very best thing you could ever experience. Your mind's going to be peaceful and joyful permanently, right? You're going to have such a wonderful life in that enlightened mental state. So if we were to lure somebody away from that, we're causing harm to that person. And then also, if that person gets to enlightenment, it's going to help the people around them too, because they're going to be able to learn how to get to enlightenment as well. So here in Thailand, they make it really easy for you. If somebody's wearing an orange robe, if they shave their hair, they're choosing not to have sex. So people know, like, we're not going to have sex with that person. That's an ordained practitioner. Also here in Thailand, if somebody wears white every single day, they're also choosing not to have sex as well. I don't have sex any longer, and I choose to wear white, but I don't choose to wear white because I have to advertise to other people that I'm not having sex. That's not the reason why I wear white. But just understand that if people wear white every day, that's typically what's going on, is they're choosing not to have sex any longer. And it's just kind of like a mechanism, kind of like a wedding ring, right? So people know that you're married. So it's the same kind of thing, right? But I wear white clothes for other reasons, even though I choose not to have sex any longer. Sex with people who are already committed in other relationships, or sex outside of a relationship you're committed to, this is unchastity, right? This is also where the Buddha says up here, who have a husband, wife, or partner, or even with one who has been garlanded by a man, woman, or partner as a sign of engagement. If you were to lure somebody away from their relationships, this is going to cause difficulties for you. You're going to experience potentially sexually transmitted diseases. You're going to get potentially beat up, or you can get murdered. You can have your personal property damaged. At the very least, if you lured this person away from somebody else and you're having sex with that person, what do you think they're going to do with you? They're not going to be loyal to you. They're going to go away to somebody else. If you were able to lure them away, someone else is going to be able to do the same thing too. Right? So the Buddha teaches you that it would be unwise to do those things. And you can see the natural law, right? He's not giving you rules or commandments. He's helping you see wise decision making, and then you can choose for yourself. There's human trafficking, where someone's like forced to have sex with other people. This would be unwise, because in those situations, you can also have sexually transmitted diseases. You can get beat up and murdered. You can get robbed in those situations. Those are the unwholesome results of choosing to have sex in those situations. Paid sexual services, even if somebody's consenting to have sex and you're being paid to do that, the sexual worker themselves and the customer are also going to experience unwholesome kamma as it relates to this. So the Buddha teaches you that it's unwise, because if you go into those environments, once again, sexually transmitted diseases, you can get beat up, you can get murdered, you can get robbed, your money can be stolen, all these different things. Notice that the Buddha doesn't say anything about same-gender relationships, right? He was aware of same-gender relationships during his lifetime, but he doesn't teach it as sexual misconduct, because there's two loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex with each other. They're not causing harm to anybody, right? There's never been a time in history where every man had sex with a woman and every woman had sex with a man. It just hasn't happened, right? Even during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were same-gender relationships going on. But he doesn't talk about it as harmful, because it's two loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex, and they're not causing harm to anybody. So this is how wise the Buddha was, that he understood the universal truth of impermanence, that it's not possible for every person to have sex with the opposite gender. Some people just aren't interested in that. They would like to have sex with the same gender. So if you're someone who prefers same-gender relationships, there's no harm in that. You're not doing anything wrong. Now, other people might get angry, right? But you're not causing that anger. That's their craving, wanting everybody to have sex with the opposite gender. And then when they don't get their craving fulfilled, they get angry. And that's coming from their ignorance, their unknowing of true reality. So you can know the truth that you're not causing any harm by choosing to have sex with someone of the same gender. If that's what you would like to do, that's your choice. But what I would suggest is you have just one partner at a time. We can also understand the teachings of the Buddha about transgender individuals. We can understand it through the teachings of the Buddha, right? If you understand that the body is one thing and the mind is something completely different, the idea that every mind will identify in the exact same way as the sexual organs of the body, that would be permanence when we understand the universal truth of impermanence. So this is why you can have a male body and the mind can identify as a female, or you can have a female body and the mind will identify as a male, right? This is normal because it's the universal truth of impermanence, that not everybody's going to identify in the same way as the body. And if you understand the cycle of rebirth, that we've all been different beings at different times in the past, then the idea that that mind is going to end up in a body that identifies with the same as the sexual organs, this is not necessarily going to happen all the time. So if somebody has been like a male, and now that mind is born into a new body, and now that new body is a female, that mind could actually identify as a male because they've been male so many existences in the past. The mind is still identifying that way, right? So we can understand through the universal truth of impermanence that, and through the cycle of rebirth, that transgender individuals are completely normal, right? So if you're a transgender individual or you know somebody who is, it's completely normal, right? It is explained through the teachings of the Buddha, okay? Then sometimes people ask me about masturbation. Sometimes people are taught like it's all unwise. You should never masturbate, right? So I'll explain to you about this. So one of the goals of getting to enlightenment is you need to eliminate what's called sensual desire in your mind, where you're not longing, yearning, that craving, desire, attachment. Well, in some cases, masturbation can actually be helpful. In other situations, it can be harmful. It just depends on how you're using it and what your goal is. So if your goal is to eliminate your sensual desire and you're using some masturbation to help you with that, that can be helpful. So say, for example, somebody listens to me talk and they realize that they have 10 boyfriends or 10 girlfriends. And they're like, oh my goodness, I should only have one. This is really unwise of me. I should bring this down to one. So now they kind of shed that down and they come down to one boyfriend or one girlfriend. But maybe they're using some masturbation because they have really high sexual craving. And now they use some masturbation to help them to do that. That's a good use of masturbation because it's helping them come down to one partner. Or say somebody wants to go rape somebody and instead they choose to masturbate. This could actually be really helpful, right? So they're not harming anybody, right? But now on the other side, let's just say somebody was masturbating excessively, maybe 10, 15, 20 times a day. This could be harmful to their own mind because it's increasing their sensual desire, right? So you need to be able to see what is it that you're doing and which direction are you moving the mind. One of the things that you can learn is that if you're familiar with dams are like multi-million-dollar structures that hold back water and protect a town from like flooding. Well, these multi-million-dollar dams, when their water is building up and building up and building up, it gets to a point where it's so high that if they continue to allow the water to build up, it's going to destroy the dam. The dam's going to structurally fall apart, and they're going to lose millions of dollars that they used to build this particular dam. So what they do is they open up the dam, they let some of the water out, they let the pressure down, and then when that water goes down, they close the dam again. And this is how they protect the dam. So your mind functions in a similar way. When you're choosing to maybe eliminate sexual craving, and maybe you're used to having sex every day, but now you went an entire week or two without having sex, you might feel the pressure building up in your mind, and you might use a little bit of masturbation to let that pressure out. And now you can go 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And now maybe you feel the pressure come up and you use a little bit of masturbation to let that out, right? So masturbation can actually be used in a helpful and beneficial way. It just depends on how you're using it. Sex with animals is one of the few things that is like black and white, right? We can understand that An animal can't give us consent to have sex with it. And I imagine if somebody did that, they would get disease and illness, and they can get injured and all these kinds of things. Sometimes people ask me about pornography. Pornography is typically, the mind can get addicted to this because it's looking at images and looking at movies and videos and things like this. And what the mind is really looking for is it's looking for some level of intimacy. And instead of going towards a partner and a real life partner, the individual will go towards pornography. And if you've experienced this, or you know somebody that has, once your mind goes down there into that pornography, it's really hard to get it back out because you kind of go into a fantasy world, and the mind has a hard time coming out of that. And now when the mind comes out of that, these real life experiences with an actual live partner, it's hard for the mind to really enjoy that because these fantasy experiences were so indulgent that it's hard for the mind to now enjoy this real life partner. So what I would encourage somebody to do is go towards a real life partner and have an actual partner relationship. Whereas if you're interested in having sex, you can have sex with a partner rather than looking at pornography, because your mind can get addicted to that. And now it's hard to come out of it, and your mind's holding on to it. And when you have it, you feel happy. And when you don't have it, you feel sad or disgruntled or something like that. So any questions on this one? Yeah, have a question? Yeah. I think this might be the first time that I've taught this to all women. I'm not surprised. It's just interesting. It's different for me. Yeah. All young women. Yeah, exactly.
My question is, I wonder how the Buddha view open relationships, not necessarily connected to sex, yeah. But it's like not necessarily.
Yeah. So the Buddha doesn't have any views necessarily. He's just teaching you the natural law of Kamma. He's just showing you, like, hey, if you have an open relationship, that's up to you to have an open relationship. That's your choice. But you will experience results because of that. Because if somebody chooses to have multiple partners, even when there's consent and everybody's agreeing that this is the way we're going to do it, the relationship never really fully grows and develops and blossoms because there isn't the loyalty, there isn't the commitment, there isn't the faithfulness, and you can't build a long-term sustaining relationship that way. And what you can experience is sexually transmitted diseases. People can get attached to each other, and they can fight and argue and be upset. So if you're looking to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state where the mind is always happy, always peaceful, always joyful, you would need to get to the point where you have just one partner. And then ultimately, as those two partners are together, they would ultimately get to a point where they eliminate sex altogether. They're not even having sex with each other. So it's not that the Buddha has a view or opinion about open relationships. It's that he's showing you wise decision-making, and having sex like that would be unchastity, and it's going to lead to difficulties and struggles in one's own life. But whether they choose to do that or not, it's up to them to choose that. So the Buddha is just helping you to see cause and effect and how these things lead to certain results.
I think I didn't put myself clearly enough. Mm-hmm. I was mentioning about maybe 3 or 4 people having a intimate relationship instead of 1-to-1.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like you said, an open relationship. So that's why I said if you have multiple partners, even if everybody's agreed that it's okay to have 3, 4, 5 partners involved, there's going to be difficulties and struggles. There's going to be unwholesome results because of that. People are going to argue. People are going to be upset with each other. People are going to maybe get sexually transmitted diseases. There's going to be people get attached. There's going to be fighting and stuff like this. It's going to produce unwholesome results, even when there's consent amongst all these people that, yes, this is what we're doing. And there's never a loyal relationship, right? When you have 3, 4, 5 people in a relationship, there's not loyalty, there's not commitment, there's not dedication. So in these situations, there's never really quite the level of closeness that you can get when you're just in a one-on-one partnership with somebody.
I don't quite understand why. Like, see, a group of family, mother, father, and 2 children. This could be...
Oh, I see. I thought you were talking about open relationship, like sexual.
No, what I mean is this could be some form of open relationship, like a man, a woman, another man, another woman. Could be another form of, say, mother, father, children. Yeah. Why would this not be loyal?
Okay, so we were talking about sex.
Yes.
So that's what I thought you were talking about.
Yes,
Because typically when people say open relationship, that's what they're referring to.
Yes, I am referring to...
Is an open sexual relationship.
Yes, I am referring to open sexual relationship. But at the same time, I think it could also be loyal to each other. And the reason why it brings, for example, jealousy is because we have this control of asking the outside world, asking the other people to act the way I want.
Yeah.
And
so having sex with multiple people at the same time, this comes from our animalistic instincts, right? Because all of us were essentially in the animal realm multiple times. And now being reborn into the human realm, oftentimes there's that craving to still have sex with multiple different beings. Well, if you're going to become enlightened, where you're becoming this better and better human being, you need to function like a better and better human being, not functioning like an animal any longer. Choosing to have sex with multiple people, you're going to experience illness, disease, fights, arguments, all these kinds of things, because people are going to get jealous. People are going to be fighting over these kinds of things. And what you're going to see is that because there isn't loyalty in the relationship, that when you get old, when you get sick, you're not going to have the people there to be able to help you and take care of you if that's something that you aspire for. Again, maybe you can't see that right now sitting here in the classroom, but if you look at this and if you look at examples of this, because I've done these things in the past, and I've worked with many students that have had these situations too. So these are the experiences that an individual will have when they're practicing an open relationship. Having a relationship like a mother, father, children, there's no sex involved here amongst those individuals. Of course, mom and dad might be having sex, but not with the children, right? This is just an open, loving relationship, meaning that they're all in a relationship with each other. But once there's sex involved, there's a certain pleasant feeling that the mind experiences through the sex, and now the mind gets attached to this person for the sexual act, right? And for the pleasure that they're getting. And now the mind holds on. So if you continue to have sex with multiple people, that's up for each person to decide for themselves. But what I'm sharing is that it's unwise. And the reasons why is because of sexually transmitted diseases, arguments and fights. People can get beat up. People can get murdered. Your material possessions can get destroyed. You can have lack of commitment and loyalty in your relationships. And you'll find that there's a lot of struggles in going in that direction. And what I would encourage someone to do is shed those animalistic instincts and become a better and better human being. And that's where the peace and the joy lies. Because now you don't have to worry about getting sexually transmitted diseases. You don't have to worry about who is your partner sleeping with today. When you call them up and they don't answer the phone, oh my goodness, is he sleeping with her? Is he sleeping with him? You don't know what this person's doing, and your mind is going to worry about those kinds of things. And you'll have fights and contention and issues like this. And you can just eliminate all of that stuff through just having one loyal, committed partner. When you're done with that person and the relationship's over, you move to another one if that's what you choose to do. And this would be functioning in a way that's not causing harm, and you can have wholesome results in that situation. But these are things you're going to need to look at. I've looked at them myself. The reason why I know these things is because I've done all these things. I haven't had sex with animals, and I don't ever intend to have sex with animals. I don't have sex with anyone anymore. But all these different things that you see up here, pretty much, I haven't done this one, right? I haven't done this one, sex without consent, but I know all these things, right? Because I used to do all these different things. And this book, the reason why it's so thick is because I did all these things and I saw what they turned out to be, right? And you're going to need to be able to see that truth for yourself and then make wise decisions for yourself. And sitting in a classroom like this and just hearing it for the first time, you're not going to be able to see that clarity. You have to investigate it for yourself and see it.
I guess I have to go through all the stages to reach that. But however, I want to ask, when you are at this stage, would you imagine yourself being loyal to two people, like without having sex? Is it possible? And why?
So I can be loyal to all my students, right? In terms of I'm committed to them. I'm committed to helping them. I'm motivated and encouraged and enthusiastic and ambitious to help you get to enlightenment and things like this. But when it comes to sex and things like that, that's a whole nother level of commitment and faithfulness that you're committing to somebody. And that's best done on a one-on-one relationship. Right? So commitment is different from a sexual relationship to something like a student-teacher relationship. So I can be committed and loyal to everybody and anybody that's in my life. Like I'm committed to my son, helping him get education, helping him grow into a better and better human being. I'm committed to my neighbor, ensuring that, I'm a good neighbor to that person, right? You can have those commitments and those loyalty and things like that. But sex is a whole nother level of commitment because there's so much craving in the mind that the mind could potentially want to go outside. And that's the problem with the unenlightened mind, is it has so much craving. It has that ill will. It has that ignorance. And when we get rid of that, we are becoming a better and better human being. And now we will function and will have more rewarding and satisfying and sustaining relationships. Because one of the other things that happen when you have multiple partners is you can damage your relationship in your community. And now you struggle in your professional environment, and you struggle in your other relationships because now people find out that you're having sex with multiple people. And this can cause somebody difficulties in their professional life and in their personal life outside of their relationships that they're having sex with. There's just so much issues with this. But each person has to look at it and see for themselves and make their own decisions. I don't encourage you to go down that path to try it out, or maybe you are trying it out, I don't know. But if somebody does try that out, they can see for themselves that it doesn't lead to anything beneficial. And at the age of 50, I know that. But at the age of 25, 27, 30, 33, 35, 40, I didn't know that. Right. And I made those unwise decisions during those periods of time. And I had to see the truth for myself. But that's a really hard way to discover the truth. You can discover the truth this way, if you like.
Sorry, one last question. Mm-hmm. I could be an annoyed student.
If your teacher was annoyed with you asking questions, I would encourage you to find a new teacher. Right? Because a teacher should be willing to teach.
I found myself being annoying right now, but I do want to ask, to be exact, I want to ask, at your age, can you imagine yourself being loyal and make this commitment to multiple partners without sex?
No, I wouldn't do that because I'm in a relationship with my wife. We don't have sex anymore. Of course, we did in the past, but we've been together for 18 years, 19 years now. We got together in 2007. So whatever the math is, 18 years, I think. I wouldn't just go off and have like another relationship where there's another house and there's another partner, or even that partner living in our house with us. It would just cause too much contention. I have this great relationship with my wife. We never argue. We're never upset with each other. We're never frustrated. We have discussions. We talk. Whenever we're confronted with a certain challenge, we're sharing our ideas about that. I almost know what she's going to say before she says it. We're raising this child together and helping him to become a better and better human being. I would never even venture to think that somehow there would be something better for me by having a second partner. My life is already perfect as it is. That's what you're doing when you're getting to enlightenment. You're going to create the ideal life for yourself. And you're creating that perfect life for yourself where there's no anger, there's no frustration, there's no agitation or anything like that. And if you have multiple partners, that's not going to be the case. There's going to be jealousy and contention back and forth between all these people. And you're not going to have peace and you're not going to have joy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you just have to see it for yourself. Okay, so I'm going to move on to this next one. This one's very straightforward, very easy. That last one usually generates a lot of discussion. So the Buddha says, abandoning false speech, refraining from false speech, a true speaker, one to be relied on, trustworthy, dependable, not a deceiver of the world. Okay, so what he's talking about here is speaking the truth. If you've done a lot of lying in your life, because we all lied growing up as children, we all did that. You know that it produced unwholesome results for you, right? When we lie, people discover our lies. They find us to not be trustworthy and dependable. In professional environment, if you were lying, people would overlook you for promotions and things like this. You would like to get to a point where people can trust you and you're dependable. And that's what's going to produce the most harmonious relationships in your life. If you do a lot of lying, your mind is kind of obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another. And how could you get to peace and joy when your mind's obsessively trying to figure out what you say from one person to the next to the next? So by just speaking the truth, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to have that obsession of the mind. The Buddha understood this so well to be dependable, reliable, and trustworthy that he didn't even tell a joke that had a lie in it, right? You can see it right here. This is a second teaching. He's teaching his son. This is his son, Rahula. Sometimes people think that the Buddha left his family and he never came back, but he actually did. He came back to that area. His son, his wife, his mother, which was his aunt actually, but his stepmother, different people came and joined him to actually learn how to be enlightened and how to get to enlightenment. So here he's teaching his son, Rahula, that it would be unwise to tell a joke that has a lie in it. Right? If you can imagine this Buddha, this fully perfectly enlightened one who's sharing all this wisdom of how to get to enlightenment, but on the side, he's telling jokes that have lies, people wouldn't know whether or not he's telling the truth or not when he's actually speaking and teaching the teachings. So he understood the natural law of Kamma so well that he didn't even tell a joke that had a lie in it. Now, you might not see a Buddha as somebody who tells a joke, right? Because oftentimes people see the Buddha in these very serious and solemn positions, like meditating. You might think that they're serious all the time. That's not true. An enlightened being is having fun, right? Their mind is very peaceful and glad and cheerful. They're having a great time no matter what they're doing in their day-to-day life, right? So a Buddha is going to tell jokes. They're going to have fun. They're not serious and solemn, right? That's not the way that an enlightened being functions, right? They can be serious, but that's not the way they are. They're peaceful. They're joyful. They're happy. They're bright. They're radiant. They're cheerful, right? So a Buddha is going to tell jokes. They're a human being just like you and I, right? I guarantee you that a Buddha picks his nose, right? And he farts, and he has boogers and mucus and stuff like this too, right? Just like you, he's a human being, right? So the more we humanize a Buddha, the better. So telling a joke that is truthful takes more work and it takes more effort, but normally those jokes are actually funnier. So when you get used to telling jokes that don't have lies in them, you'll get better and better at doing this. And it's important not to tell jokes that are degrading and negative and diminishing other people, but also not degrading and diminishing to yourself. Sometimes people tell jokes that are degrading and diminishing to themselves. So if you're degrading or diminishing yourself for other people, this wouldn't be wise to tell jokes this way. So by speaking the truth and being honest, you can be reliable and dependable and trustworthy, and you'll find more success in your professional and your personal relationships. So do you guys have any questions on this one? No? Okay, this one's usually pretty straightforward. Okay, so the last one, the Buddha says, refraining from strong drink and sloth-producing drugs, substances that cause heedlessness, the basis for heedlessness. So remember, whenever you're learning the teachings of the Buddha, you're not believing anything. You're not assuming anything. So don't even assume that you know what this word heedlessness means, right? If you need to go investigate this, go investigate it. Look at it. Examine it. Try to understand what it means. So that's what I put here, because not everybody understands what that word means. What the word heedless means is careless, thoughtless, inattentive, uncalm, unaware, or unmindful. If you're putting a substance into the body that's producing that, it's taking you in the opposite direction of enlightenment, because you need to have awareness of mind. If you're going to purify your mind, you need to have awareness of what's going on in your mind, because when you see unwholesome qualities, you're going to need to eliminate those. And when you have wholesome qualities, you're going to need to support those, encourage those, and don't allow them to fade. So it's your mindfulness that's going to allow you to do that. So if you're putting a substance into the body that is taking the mind towards heedlessness, you're not going to be able to be mindful at all times. And this produces a lot of unfortunate results in one's life. If you talk to people who are in jail or who are in prison, if you ask them what they're there for, they'll tell you they're there for murder or robbing a bank or something like that. But if you're like, no, like really, like, why are you here? They'll say, well, it's actually substances. About 80% of them. They'll say, I would have never murdered that person if I wasn't high on drugs, or I would have never robbed that bank if I didn't have a drug habit, right? So oftentimes it's this particular precept that people aren't practicing that then causes them to kill, to steal, to have sexual misconduct, and then to lie. So if you're causing heedlessness in the mind, now you're more likely to have difficulties with making decisions in all those other situations. So up here, what I've done is I put a few substances that we can talk about, because it's not always black and white, right? There's something like marijuana that we know has medical benefits, right? There's unrefutable evidence. There's children that have 20 seizures a day. They give them a little bit of CBD oil on the tongue. They don't have another seizure for 6 months, just with one little drop on the tongue, right? So it has irrefutable benefits, that there's medical benefits there. But if someone is ingesting this for heedlessness, then they need to be aware of that and realize that that's unwise. So there's two sides to the plant. There's THC and there's CBD. The CBD is the medical properties. The THC is the high. So if somebody's looking for a high, they're going to be looking for a high THC content. Whereas if they're looking for medical benefits, they're usually looking for a high CBD content. And then also the way you ingest it matters, right? If you take it as an edible or you take it as an oil, this is not going to cause harm to the body. But if you smoke it, this is going to cause harm to the lungs, right? So you need to be able to pay attention to these things. And if somebody's taking marijuana for things like stress or anxiety, this is not a medical benefit, right? Because stress and anxiety isn't caused by biology. It's caused by craving, desire, attachment. So there's no amount of marijuana that is going to fix your stress or anxiety. So if you're interested in getting rid of the stress or anxiety, you need to train your mind, and that's what will get rid of it. Using marijuana, you might not feel stress when you have the marijuana, but then when the marijuana is gone, you feel the stress because the craving, the desire, the attachments are still there. So an individual can look at something like marijuana and see that in some cases it could be beneficial, in other cases maybe not. And it's only that individual that's going to know whether or not they're going for a high or not. And that's where you need to make your own personal choices with all aspects of this path. Cigarettes, they don't have any medical benefit whatsoever. And more people have figured this out. And that's why we're seeing less and less people smoking these days. Where at one time there was a lot of people who smoked and they were getting a lot of difficulties in the health of the body because of that. So if somebody was smoking, I would encourage them to choose to gradually eliminate that, because that's going to be much better for the health of the body and your mind. You're going to need to pay attention to prescription medications, because some prescriptions can actually be addictive and they can actually produce heedlessness within the mind. So when somebody offers you a prescription like a doctor, it's wise to look that up and see what kind of prescription is this, rather than just blindly taking the prescription that the doctor tells you to take. We're in the information age. We can do some research online and we can check to see, does this medicine have any addictive properties to it? And if so, you might ask the doctor for a different prescription. And in some cases, they're going to be able to give you a different prescription. But in other cases, they may not be able to. And they might say, this is the only one that you can take. And so in that situation, if you have that wisdom to know that this is an addictive medication, now you're going to take it just for the period of time that you need it, and then try to get off of it as soon as possible so that you don't get addicted to it. So this is good information for you to have entering into the situation where you're now taking a certain substance. You're going to need to pay attention to your caffeine intake. Caffeine is a stimulant. It's a drug. It's a widely available drug. It's a widely legal drug, but it is a stimulant, and it produces overactivity and heedlessness in the mind. And you would like to pay attention to this. If you get rid of caffeine, you're going to notice that your mind functions more optimally. Oftentimes people are taking caffeine so that they don't feel drowsy and tired, and it lifts their mind up. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're going to have sustainable energy all day long. You're not going to get tired. You're not going to get exhausted. You will get sleepy where you need to take a rest and get some sleep, but you won't get exhausted or tired. You have sustainable energy all day long. But your mind will never develop that if you rely on something like caffeine, because the caffeine is going to lift your mind up and it's going to be there temporarily while you have that stimulant on board, and then it's going to drop off after that. So if you decide to eliminate caffeine, you might actually experience withdrawal symptoms. Just like a person who's addicted to heroin or something else is going to have withdrawal symptoms, you might have the same thing with caffeine. You might have headaches. You might have dry mouth. You might have shakes and things like this. Let that be a reminder to you that you're detoxing from a drug, from a stimulant, right? So if you decide that you would like to get off of caffeine, you're going to allow your mind to build natural energy all day long, where you don't have to just rely on this caffeine to take you up and then you'll crash down after that. You can build long-term sustainable energy where you have energy all day long. Then you're going to need to pay attention to sugar intake. We learned this when we were kids, right? Even like an excessive amount of sugar can produce heedlessness as well. So usually we learn that as a child, and then we kind of like are fine with that, right? Sometimes people will tell you that psychedelic substances are going to help you to get to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. Psychedelic substances do promote this introspection in the mind, where an individual looks inward and they think that they're kind of uncovering some things about their own mind and their life that is helping them to advance. But that introspection that you need to develop in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to develop that naturally, because you're going to need that introspection at all times during your day. If you can only be introspective when you have a psychedelic substance, then you're not going to be able to be introspective at all times during your day. So like, say, for example, you're talking to your mom and you guys are having a conversation and it starts to become a little bit contentious and a little bit challenging. You're going to need to be introspective to figure out how to respond in this situation. You can't be like, hey, mom, can you hold on? I need to go drop a hit of LSD. I need to go have some magic mushrooms, and then I'll come back to you in a few days and talk later, right? You're not going to be able to do that, right? So you would like to be introspective at all times during your day. And if you rely on something like a psychedelic substance, it's not going to allow your mind to do that. You're not going to be able to develop that long-term ability to be introspective at all times during your day, because your mind is only experiencing that introspection when you have the psychedelic substance on board. Do you guys have any questions on this one? Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
You guys just need to be patient with the mics. Just turn it on. Just wait a second or two and then talk.
Yeah,
you guys are like ready to talk right now.
Yeah, it's my fault.
Just cha-cha. In Thailand, we have the word cha-cha.
Cha-cha.
It means slowly, slowly.
Yeah, it's you just know my personality, I guess.
No, it's just the craving. That's all.
Oh yeah. So it's also another craving. Yes. So I want to ask like about the thing like caffeine, because like today in the morning I just because I drink a cup of coffee, so that I could stay here without drowning or sleepy. And I could grab the knowledge or that kind of things. Mm-hmm. So if I don't drink that one, maybe I will miss that kind of part of lecture, like kind of things. And also like a situation like when I take off my job, like after a whole day long job, like I take off like a 6 o'clock and I still need a time to study or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I need to like, kind of like cheating, like I need to drink a cup of coffee. Is that, so maybe I think that is a good way to use coffee. Is that true or not? Like,
so that's where you are in your life right now.
Yeah, that's
right. But if you would like to experience a better way of life, that's what I'm explaining to you, that there's this better way of life where you can have energy all day long, naturally. I don't know if you guys realize, but I only slept for 3 hours last night. That's not typical. I usually sleep for 6 or 8 hours, but I was in a conversation with a student last night and I was helping them with something. I only had 3 hours of sleep last night, right? But I can sustain my energy all day long because I don't go up and down, right? So if you allow your mind to continue to rely on caffeine to give you that energy, which you did today, which is, okay, this is where you are today. But if you would like to get to the point where at work and in all your other situations you have sustainable energy, then you can slowly move away from the caffeine. And it might mean that you need to go to sleep earlier, because I don't know what time you go to sleep and how much sleep you get. Right now, you might not be getting enough sleep. And that's a wise decision too, to make sure that you're getting rest each individual night. Because if you're only sleeping regularly 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, and that's not enough for you, then you're going to need to expand that and sleep a little bit more. And that's a wise choice for you. Part of this journey to enlightenment is to understand this body and understand this mind and what does it need in order to be successful in this world. And now let me start making decisions to ensure that this body and this mind is getting what it needs. It needs food. It needs water, it needs clothing, it needs shelter, it needs medical care, it needs these different things, but you also need sleep as well, and you can make wise choices for that. But if you're shrinking your sleep and then relying on this substance in order to lift your mind up, now you're not functioning as an optimal human being, a human being that doesn't need these things, because you'll be attached. Because now let's just say you go on a business trip and you have this very important business meeting and you've been used to drinking coffee all the time, but now you have to go into this business meeting at 8 a.m. in the morning and you're in a different town and you don't even know where to get coffee from. Now you go into this business meeting and you don't perform well at all. And now you just lost a client, or you lost an opportunity for a major contract of something that could have been very helpful for your life. So if you get rid of the coffee, if you get rid of the caffeine, and you have sustainable energy all day long, you can wake up in that new town, you can go to your business meeting, you can knock it out of the park, you can do a really good job, and hey, look at my life. You've just been able to be successful, right? So that's why you would like to be able to cultivate these qualities so that now you're not attached to caffeine for your energy, because that caffeine is not permanent. You're not going to be able to find it permanently. So now you would like to get to the point where you're unattached to this and you can perform optimally, whether you have caffeine or not. So by getting rid of caffeine, you can then perform optimally at all times.
Yeah, but if my job didn't allow me to having a regular enough the sleeping times, and also during the job the emotion do ups and downs, and there's no room for me to be peaceful all the time.
Yes.
And then I definitely get off the job, I would just feel the energy is just consuming out, and all I need to do, all I could do, have the ability to do is to sleep. But if I go directly to sleep, and there's basically no time for me to study or do the thing I wanted, so it kind of.
Yeah, so maybe as part of this path, what you decide is to find a new job.
Yeah.
Right? If you're basically, if you construct this life through your unwise decisions, you'll get to a point where you don't like your life and you feel miserable, and you have to take a vacation away from your life, and you have a great time when you're on vacation, but then when you have to go back to your life, it's I don't want to go back to that. But you're the one who created that. Right? So you can make different decisions and experience different results. That's what I teach, right? Is if there's anything you don't particularly care for in your life, cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. But if you hold on to this job, because maybe it has a really high paycheck, or maybe you have certain friends at that job and you're holding on to it, you won't feel comfortable to let go. The other thing you were mentioning is you're saying, I can't do everything I want. That's part of the problem. You have probably all these wants, right? And now I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. And now when you can't do it, you feel stress, you feel anxiety. So that stress isn't coming from your job. That stress is coming from your own mind. So if you start constructing your life through training your mind and making wise decisions, you can create the ideal life for yourself that you enjoy. When I go on holiday, I just 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I went on holiday with my son. I had a great time when I was on the holiday with him, but I have a great time here too, right? So the life that I'm living, I completely enjoy every aspect of the life that I'm living, right? So I don't have to take a vacation from my life, right? Because I enjoy every single aspect of my life. I have a great relationship with my son, with my daughter. I thoroughly enjoy where I live. I enjoy what I do on a day-to-day basis. I enjoy helping students. Every single thing, I can enjoy it. So you would like to get to that point in your life where you enjoy every single part of it, but you can't do that if you're making unwise decisions, just holding on to money or holding on to caffeine or holding on to open relationships and just having lots of different sexual partners. You can't get to peacefulness in any of these ways.
But, sometimes I will doubt that if I kind of ability to that kind of light can construct
so of course you have doubt now because you don't have wisdom. You don't have the wisdom of how to do it. So of course you're going to doubt your ability to do it. But if you gradually, slowly learn, you'll get the wisdom of how to actually do it.
Yeah, I think that needs some, like, maybe you need something like you need to be like a smart, you need to have a kind of ability, you need to have some kind of background, or your parents support you, that kind of certain it's limited. When you have a limited resource and all you need to do just as you say, I have to hold on money because money made me survival, and you definitely have to have the enough resource, and then you could have the ability, have the runes, the courage, energy, time to build that kind of ideal life or whatever.
The only thing that's standing between you and enlightenment is your own dedication, your own determination, your own diligence. Because you don't have to be a brain surgeon to get to enlightenment, but you do need to cultivate wisdom. But you have the ability to cultivate wisdom. But oftentimes the mind is complacent, and it will come up with all kinds of excuses of why I can't do that thing. Well, if you would like to stay stressed and having anxiety and anger and frustration the rest of this life, you can do that. That's a choice for you to make. But what I'm sharing is there is this better way of life. And if you would like to learn that better way of life, I'm here to help you. And it's just your own determination, dedication, and diligence that's standing in your way. Because I've removed all the other obstacles. I don't charge anything for the books, for the personal guidance, for the courses, the retreats. Everything's available at no cost. The only thing standing in your way is your own effort.
So it's that my mind stop me to do that. Know the what I call enough, the resource and the money, that kind of support thing.
Yeah, the mind's complacent in the unenlightened state. Do you know what complacency is? Complacency. The mind is complacent.
I don't understand.
You might decide to look on your Chinese app and translate it, because you have one, right?
Yeah.
You can translate that word into Chinese and you'll probably know what it means.
Yeah.
Complacency. That's what the mind's experiencing, or complacent. Right? That's what the mind will typically experience. Any other questions you guys would like to ask or talk about? Okay. So what I'm going to do is just end class here for our lunch break. And when we come back, I'm going to teach you guys walking meditation, because we're going to take a lunch break here. We can actually take an hour and 15 minutes. We can get back together at 2:15, because it only takes me like 10 or 15 minutes to teach you walking meditation. And then you can do it for like 20 minutes. And then we'll be wrapping up by 3 o'clock. Normally we take an hour and a half lunch break. We usually come back at 1:30, but because we had a nice discussion here and it's almost 1 o'clock, let's go up to 2:15. And then when we come back in 45 minutes, I can teach you walking meditation. You can do it, and we can have like a little short discussion afterwards. And what walking meditation is good for is if you have an overactive mind, if you have a lot of anxiety, a lot of energy in your mind, and the last thing you're thinking about is sitting and being still somewhere, walking meditation is really helpful for you to get out that energy out of the mind and be able to still meditate. So if you'd like to learn that, I'm going to start teaching at 2:15. Okay, so thank you guys for your discussion. Thank you for your questions. It's great to share the teachings with you guys. Enjoy your lunch, and perhaps I'll see you guys afterwards. Okay? You're welcome.